My daughter's new homeroom teacher turned out to be my billionaire ex-husband. And what he spotted during her after-school tutoring session left him visibly shaken. Elena, we need to talk about Sophie. Right now. Daniel's voice broke over the phone in a way I had never once heard in the 6 years we were married. This was a man who had closed billion-dollar mergers without blinking, who had testified before Congress with the calm of someone ordering coffee, who had once told a room full of investors that failure was simply data he hadn't analyzed yet. And he was trembling. Is she okay? Did something happen? My breath seized in my chest. She's not hurt, he said. But during our session today, I noticed something. The way her left hand trembles when she's writing for too long. The way she loses her train of thought mid-sentence and then covers it, makes a joke, changes the subject, moves on like nothing happened. Elena, these aren't just quirks. I've seen this pattern before. In myself. Before everything went wrong. The silence that followed stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, a dish towel still in my hand, the sound of the evening news drifting in from the living room where Sophie was supposed to be doing homework. I think you need to get her to a neurologist, Daniel said. This week. Not next month. This week. Have you ever had the ground pulled out from under you by the last person on earth you expected? That moment when someone who once shattered your world suddenly becomes the only one standing between your child and something unthinkable. If you've ever had to let your guard down with someone who broke you, just to protect someone you love more than your own life, this story will reach into your chest and squeeze. If you believe a mother's love has no ceiling, no walls, no pride strong enough to stand in its way, hit that like button right now. For everyone who knows what it means to swallow every feeling you have for the sake of your child, comment, I stand with Elena, below. Stay until the very end, because what the doctors find, and the truth that can no longer stay hidden, will change absolutely everything. I never thought I would see Daniel Whitmore again, let alone find him standing at the front of my daughter's 7th grade classroom with a piece of chalk in his hand and that same quiet intensity he used to wear in boardrooms. The morning I first saw him there, I had simply come to drop off Sophie's forgotten lunch. A Wednesday, ordinary and gray, smelling of rain and cafeteria pasta. I rounded the corner of the main hall of Crestwood Academy, and there he was, writing a grammar exercise on the whiteboard in his immaculate handwriting, wearing dark slacks and a simple white shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow, as if he had never once run a company that employed 40,000 people across 11 countries. As if the name Whitmore didn't appear on buildings. As if none of it had ever happened. My lunch bag hit the floor. The thud was louder than it had any right to be. A few students looked up. Daniel did not turn around immediately. He finished the sentence he was writing, unhurried, deliberate, the way he did everything, and then he set down the chalk and turned. And there we were. 8 years of silence in a middle school hallway that smelled like industrial cleaner and dry erase markers. The English department head, Mrs. Carver, appeared at my elbow with a warm smile that suggested she had not yet read the room. Oh, Ms. Reyes. Have you met Mr. Whitmore? He just joined us this semester. Wonderful addition to the department. Sophie is in his 3rd period class. We've met, I said. My voice came out steadier than it had any right to. Daniel's eyes, dark, still, always more observant than comfortable, settled on mine. Elena. Just my name. Nothing attached to it. No apology. No explanation, no performance of surprise. Just my name, the way you say the name of someone you have been expecting. Mrs. Carver glanced between us with the practiced sensitivity of a woman who had spent 30 years reading faculty meetings and parent evenings. Oh, I'll leave you both to it. Parent-teacher meet and greet is Thursday at 6, Ms. Reyes. Mr. Whitmore will have a slot. She was gone before I could find a reason to call her back. The hallway thinned as students filed into classrooms. The bell hadn't rung yet, but it would in 3 minutes. I knew because I had stood in this hallway enough times to know the rhythm of this school, this building, this ordinary life I had constructed with such deliberate care. "What are you doing here, Daniel?" I bent to pick up the lunch bag, needing something to do with my hands, needing to look away from him for one moment long enough to find my footing. "Teaching English literature," he replied, crouching to help me gather the scattered contents. A sandwich container, an apple, a note I'd tucked in that Sophie would pretend to be embarrassed by and secretly keep. As of 8 weeks ago. His movements were careful, measured. There was a stiffness in his left shoulder that hadn't been there before. "That is not an answer to the question I asked." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." He handed me the apple. Our fingers didn't touch, but it was a near thing. Before either of us could say more, the bell rang and the hallway flooded. Lockers crashed open, conversations collided, sneakers squeaked on linoleum. And among the crowd came Sophie, her backpack hanging off one shoulder, her dark curls escaping her ponytail the way they always did by midday, talking with her hands to her best friend, Jade, about something that required a great deal of emphasis. She was laughing. The sound of it moved through me the way it always did, like something warm and sudden. Then she saw us. She stopped. The laugh didn't disappear entirely, but it shifted, became a question. Her eyes moved from me to Daniel and back again with the particular sharpness of a child who has spent her whole life as the only witness to her mother's carefully maintained composure and has therefore become very good at noticing when it slips. "Mom." Her brow furrowed. "What are you doing here? It's not a conference day." "You forgot your lunch, sweetheart." I held up the bag with a smile I was reasonably confident looked natural. She studied me for one more second, the way she did, then shifted her gaze to Daniel. "Do you guys know each other?" "Your mom and I are old acquaintances," Daniel said. His tone was easy, practiced, giving away nothing. "That's one word for it," I said, very quietly, in a register meant only for myself. Sophie's eyes narrowed. She had the hearing of someone who had grown up listening for things that weren't being said. "Weird," she pronounced. Then, with the ruthless efficiency of a 12-year-old who has assessed a situation and found it unworthy of further investigation, "Thanks for the lunch, Mom. Can you go?" "You're embarrassing me." Jade stifled a smile. I left. In the parking lot, I sat in my car with the engine off for 4 full minutes. I know it was 4 because I watched the clock on the dashboard without really seeing it, just needing the numbers to give me something to focus on while the rest of me caught up with what had just happened. Daniel Whitmore. In Cedar Falls. In my daughter's school. In the building I drove to twice a week, the building where Sophie's artwork hung in the main corridor, where I knew the names of the security guards and the woman who ran the library and the vice principal who always remembered Sophie's name. He had walked into the most ordinary, carefully protected corner of my life and set up a classroom in it. And from the way he had said my name, just my name, like he'd rehearsed for it, I understood that this was not an accident. I drove home. I sat at my kitchen table. I did not call anyone, because there was no one I could call who knew the full story. I had made sure of that years ago, when I had packed 2 suitcases and Sophie's baby bag and driven away from a life that had everything in it except the one thing I needed most, which was a husband who came home. That night, washing dishes, I watched the window above the sink reflect my own face back at me. I looked tired. I looked like someone who had just seen a ghost and was trying to decide whether ghosts could be reasoned with. The Thursday conference arrived the way things you dread always do, faster than logic allows. I dressed carefully, which annoyed me, because it meant some part of me still cared what Daniel Whitmore thought of how I looked, and that part of me needed to be dealt with firmly and at length. I wore my usual work clothes, pulled my hair back, I drove to the school and walked to his classroom with the same neutral expression I used for difficult editorial meetings and conversations with Sophie's pediatrician when I already suspected I wouldn't like what I was about to hear. He was already there. Papers stacked on his desk with the precision I remembered from the home office he used to spend entire weekends in. Reading glasses pushed up onto his forehead, a detail that caught me off guard for reasons I couldn't immediately name. He looked up when I came in and gestured to the chair across from his desk the same way he used to gesture to chairs in conference rooms, in restaurants, in the living room of the penthouse where we used to live, where everything was beautiful and expensive and somehow always slightly cold. Old habits. "She's doing beautifully," he said before I had fully sat down. "Her written work is exceptional. She has a genuine instinct for narrative structure. The way she builds tension within a paragraph is something I'd expect from a student 2 or 3 years older. Her last short story assignment was the strongest piece of writing I received from any student this term, by a significant margin. Despite everything, despite every wall I had constructed and maintained and reinforced for 8 years, pride moved through me warm and involuntary. "She's always loved stories," I said. "She gets it from you," he replied. Simple. Unguarded. It sat in the air between us, and I had to look at the student artwork on the wall behind him because looking at his face while he said things like that was more than I was prepared for on a Thursday evening in a middle school classroom. "Daniel." I folded my hands in my lap. "Why are you really here? And I mean here, Cedar Falls. This school. Sophie's classroom specifically." He was quiet. He took his glasses off his forehead and set them on the desk and looked at them for a moment as if they might provide some assistance. Then, when you're lying in a hospital bed and the doctors are talking to your assistant about next steps because there's no one else, no wife because you no longer have one, no family close enough, because you spent a decade building a company instead of maintaining the people who cared about you, you start counting. You take stock of what was real. His voice was level, but it cost him something. I could hear the cost. I counted very few things. You were one. Sophie was the other. Even though she doesn't know who I am. Even though I've never held her or heard her laugh or known what her handwriting looks like. I counted her anyway. The words arrived like something physical. I felt them in my sternum. "She can't know," I said, immediately, reflexively, the way you say the thing you've rehearsed in case this exact conversation ever happened. "Not like this. Not yet. I know that. You have no right to come here and simply decide, I know that too." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't defend himself. He just said it plainly, which was somehow worse than an argument would have been, because I had prepared for an argument. "I'm not asking you for anything, Elena. I'm not here to disrupt the life you've built or to make demands or to pressure you into anything. I'm asking to know her, as her teacher, on her terms. And if one day, if and when you think she's ready, I would like the chance to be honest with her. But that decision is yours. I understand that." I looked at the drawing of a tree on the wall behind him, its branches full of names written in different colors of marker. Some student's family tree, probably. A class project. I thought about the blank space on Sophie's own family tree, the careful vagueness I had constructed, the story I had told her about a father who was wonderful and gone and not to be grieved too heavily because that was not what he would have wanted. "I need time," I said finally, "to think about what this means. What any of this means." "Take whatever you need," he said. "I'm not going anywhere." That was 6 weeks ago. In the weeks that followed, I built what I can only describe as a careful, deliberately maintained version of normal. Sophie went to school. She came home. She did homework at the kitchen table and argued with me about screen time and made elaborate weekend plans with Jade that required my logistical involvement. She talked about her classes with the selective enthusiasm of someone who had decided which parts of her inner life were worth sharing and which were better kept private. And she began, gradually, then all at once, to talk about Mr. Whitmore. Not obsessively. Not in the way that might have alarmed me. But with the particular warmth that children reserve for teachers who have seen something real in them, something they hadn't fully seen in themselves yet. "He told me my metaphors are visceral," she announced one evening, delivering this information while eating cereal for dinner because I had forgotten to defrost anything and she had judged the situation correctly and helped herself. "He said most kids her age write around feelings instead of into them. He said I write into them." She said this with studied casualness, the way you deliver news you are secretly very pleased about. "That's wonderful, Sophie," I said. "Is that what visceral means?" she asked. "More or less," I said. "It means it lands. It means people feel it." She nodded, satisfied, and returned to her cereal. And I stood at the counter and recognized, in the precise and particular way she had absorbed that small piece of praise and turned it over in her mind like a stone that might be valuable, the echo of a man I used to know. Daniel had always had that quality, the ability to notice the thing that most people walked past. It had made him extraordinary at building companies. I was only just beginning to understand what it might mean that he was now directing it at our daughter from across a classroom. It was a Wednesday, always a Wednesday, it seemed, that the real things happened, when everything shifted. I was at my desk working through a manuscript edit when my phone lit up with the school's main number. Not Daniel. The school. My stomach dropped before I answered. "Ms. Reyes? This is Nurse Callahan at Crestwood. I want you to know first that Sophie is fine and she's here with me and she's calm. But she had a small episode in Mr. Whitmore's class about 20 minutes ago. Some involuntary tremoring in her left hand, and she reported feeling foggy and disoriented for a short time. Mr. Whitmore noticed immediately and brought her to me right away. She's been asking for you." I was in my car before the nurse finished the sentence. I don't remember locking the house. When I got to the school, Sophie was in the nurse's office sitting on the paper-covered examination table with her arms crossed and the expression of someone who is very embarrassed and is managing this by being visibly annoyed at everyone present. The color in her cheeks was a little off. Otherwise, she looked like herself. I hugged her harder than she thought was necessary. She tolerated it with the dignity of the wrongfully confined. Daniel was standing in the corridor outside the nurse's office. He had clearly been there a while. His jacket was off, draped over his arm, and there was chalk dust on his shirt that he hadn't bothered to brush away. He looked like someone who had been standing still in one place while his mind was moving very fast somewhere else. "Walk me through it," I said, keeping my voice low so Sophie wouldn't hear through the door. She was doing a timed writing response, he said. She had been working for about 12 minutes. I was circulating the room and I noticed her pen had stopped moving. I thought she was thinking, but when I looked more closely, her left hand was trembling, not dramatically, but consistently, against the desk. And she was staring at the page but not seeing it. I said her name twice before she responded. He paused. When she came back to herself, she laughed it off. Said she'd zoned out. Then she asked if she could go to the bathroom. I walked her to the nurse instead. I pressed my fingers to my mouth for a moment. "Has this happened before? In your class?" He nodded. 3 times that I've observed. Over the past 4 weeks. Always during extended concentration on written work. Always the left hand. Always followed by brief disorientation and then rapid, complete recovery. And always, he met my eyes, followed by Sophie making a joke and changing the subject, as if it hadn't happened. My throat felt very tight. She told me she gets tired when she concentrates too hard. I thought it was just, "It's not tiredness," he said. Not unkindly. but with the certainty of someone who has done their research and does not want to waste time being gentle about it. He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a folded piece of paper. He held it out to me. I took it. A name. A clinic 40 minutes away. Pediatric neurology. I want to be clear that I'm not qualified to diagnose anything, he said. But I've spent the last 2 weeks reading everything I could find about the pattern I'm seeing. What I'm describing is consistent with focal seizures, specifically what's sometimes called motor onset or previously absence-type presentations. They're often very subtle, particularly in children who are high-functioning and have learned, consciously or not, to mask them. He paused. They're also very treatable when caught early, and frequently missed for years because they don't look the way people expect seizures to look. I stared at the piece of paper. The name on it meant nothing to me. The word seizures meant everything. I contacted this clinic 2 days ago, he continued. Not to make an appointment, that's not my place. I just wanted to know if the timeline for an evaluation would be reasonable. They said they could see a new pediatric patient within 2 weeks with a referral from her GP. He paused. I should have told you I was doing that research. I should have come to you sooner. I'm sorry I didn't. The acknowledgement of the boundary he'd crossed was immediate and genuine, which made it harder to be angry at him for crossing it. I hated that. I had always hated how difficult Daniel made it to stay angry at him once he'd decided to stop being wrong about something. Sophie appeared in the doorway behind me, backpack already on, chin up, wearing the expression of someone who has decided to be absolutely fine about everything. I'm fine. It was like 30 seconds and I feel completely normal now. Can we go? Yes, I said. We're going. I turned to Daniel. I didn't say thank you, because I wasn't ready to say thank you. I said, I'll call the clinic tomorrow. He nodded. Okay. Sophie called a goodbye to the nurse, then turned back to look at Daniel once more from the door. Sorry for the drama, Mr. Whitmore. No drama, he said. Text your mom from the car so she knows you're settled. Sophie tilted her head at him with an expression that seemed to be deciding whether this crossed a line and concluding that it did not. Sure, she said. Then we left. In the car, Sophie was quiet for longer than usual. We got through the school gates and onto the main road before she said, without any preamble, You and Mr. Whitmore have a weird energy. I kept my eyes forward. The road ahead was clear and unhelpfully featureless. What kind of weird? Like you're both trying really hard to be normal around each other, she said. Like there's a thing you're both pretending isn't a thing. She tucked one knee up against the dashboard. Were you close? Like actually close. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. We knew each other. A long time ago. In a different part of my life, before you were born. How different? I considered the question. Every word felt load-bearing. Very, I said. She absorbed this. Turned to look out the window at the passing trees, already going gold at the edges. He talks about books like they're alive, she said eventually. Like they're urgent. Like they matter right now, not just historically. You do that too. I said nothing. I like him, she said. Just that. No elaboration. The 3 words sat in the car with us the rest of the way home, and I could not find anywhere to put them that didn't ache. That night I waited until Sophie was asleep. Then I sat at the kitchen table with the folded piece of paper from Daniel, my cold cup of tea, and my laptop open to a search I had been putting off all evening. Focal seizures. Children. Symptoms. Presentation. Misdiagnosis. The results were comprehensive and, as I read, increasingly difficult to sit with. Focal seizures in children could be so subtle as to be nearly invisible. A brief tremor, a moment of disconnection, a child who blinks and then laughs and says they just zoned out. They were frequently missed for months or years, particularly in children who were verbal and social and good at presenting a version of themselves that functioned smoothly. They were frequently hereditary. They were frequently accompanied by headaches that the child attributed to screen time or studying too hard. I read that last part twice. Then I closed the laptop, opened it, closed it again, sat in my kitchen at 11:30 at night in the house I had built around the single most important project of my life, which was Sophie's safety and happiness and future, and I understood, slowly, with great reluctance, with something that felt uncomfortably close to grief, that safety was not a thing you built once and then kept forever behind glass. Required, sometimes, the willingness to reach toward the last hand you expected to be reaching toward. I texted Daniel before I went to bed. I'm making the appointment tomorrow morning. He replied within 2 minutes, which meant he hadn't been sleeping either. Thank you, Elena. The pause. Then, she's going to be all right. I typed back, you don't know that. He replied, no. But I'm not going anywhere regardless of what the results say. And I want you to know that. I sat with my phone for a long time after that, reading those 2 sentences over and over with the particular feeling of someone who has spent years building walls and has just discovered one of them has a door in it that she forgot she left unlocked. In the morning, Sophie came downstairs to find me already on the phone with the clinic. She poured herself cereal and listened without making it obvious she was listening, which was a skill she had clearly been developing for some time. When I hung up, she looked up. Who was that? I've made you an appointment, I said. A different kind of checkup. Neurological. Because of yesterday. She put down her spoon. And for just a moment, just a breath, the composure she wore so consistently dropped. Underneath it I saw something I recognized as relief. The relief of someone who has been managing something quietly for a long time and has finally been given permission to stop managing it alone. Okay, she said, softly. Then she picked her spoon back up. Is Mr. Whitmore the one who made you do this? I started to say something carefully measured. She cut me off, not unkindly. It's okay if he is, Mom. He pays attention. Like, really pays attention, not just teacher pays attention. He notices things. She shrugged, tucking into her cereal. It's a good thing. I stood at the kitchen counter and thought about a man who had once been so focused on building the future that he had failed to be present in it, who had then very nearly died, and had apparently used the time since to become someone who noticed things. Sophie had found in 4 weeks what 6 years of marriage had not produced, which was Daniel Whitmore paying attention to the right things at the right time. And I did not know yet what to do with that. But I knew what I needed to do today, which was take my daughter to a doctor, and let someone qualified tell me what was happening inside her extraordinary, complicated, deeply loved brain. Everything else, the truth she was owed, the conversation that was coming, the door in the wall that I had discovered I'd left unlocked, could wait until we knew what we were dealing with. Everything else could wait one more day. Have you ever had to set down every feeling you were entitled to because something mattered more than being right? That moment when protecting your child means accepting help from the person you swore you were finished with. If you've ever had to trust someone who once failed you, not because you'd forgiven everything, not because it was easy, but because the stakes were simply too high to do otherwise, hit that like button right now. If you believe that people can change, that they can become slowly and without fanfare the person they should have been all along, comment, second chances, below. Stay with me for part 2, where the scan results come back and the truth that Sophie has been owed her entire life can no longer be kept behind a word as small and insufficient as complicated.